Hey guys, good morning and good afternoon. This video is an example of some of the practice problems that we did in class yesterday. I will be going over the steps on how to solve this particular problem, which is problem number 1 on your worksheet for today. Your worksheet consists of 8 problems. I would like for you to be able to get through all of the problems. This is going to be one of the more difficult problems. If you can do these problems, you should be fine. In page 28 of your textbook, you should be able to find the steps that are used to solve mostly all of the equations. If you do not have them, please go ahead and take a second, pause the video, and review those rules that we kind of highlighted in class yesterday. If for some reason I didn't do this with your particular class, here are the steps. Step number 1 is to distribute, not distribute, but distribute. And by using the distributive property, the whole process or the reasoning behind that is to remove all of the parentheses. We're going to take this crazy looking problem and make it a little bit more simple. Step 2 that we discussed in class, or you see in that page 28, is to combine all like terms. For example, if we have more than one set of regular numbers on the left side, we combine those. Or if we have them on the right hand side, we also combine those. In this first problem, we are not going to see any combining like terms. So if you don't need to combine like terms, we skip that step. Step 3, we talked about adding or subtracting to put all the variables on one side. But we talked about just keeping it simple and adding. And if we want to get rid of something, we add the opposite. So we're going to add to get all variables on one side. Step 4, we're going to add to get all numbers. Just numbers, not numbers with variables, those are considered variables, to the other side. And final step, step 5, that is where you see us trying to get the variable on one side. So we want to get to have just a variable to equal just a number. We typically do this by creating a 1, and that is by multiplying. And we typically multiply by the reciprocal. We'll talk a little bit about that in our first example. Feel free to pause this and write this in your notes somewhere. Even though you've already done it, it's not a bad idea to kind of rewrite this. So go ahead and pause. Meanwhile, I'll get problem number 1 started. This is problem number 1. I ran into a couple recording mishaps earlier where I did the problem. I did a great job creating the video, but the microphone wasn't turned on, so I got to do another video. So the first step, kind of like we mentioned yesterday, and in all of our examples, one of the things that I like to do was draw this little arrow looking thing of where it started, what the step was, and what we end up having. So step 1, I'm going to, there you go, that looks a little bit better. So in step 1, we're going to use the distributive property, right? So we're going to be using the distributive property, and we're going to distribute this -3 to both terms inside, and this is only on the right hand side of the equation. So we're going to distribute the -3 to the negative 5 and the positive x on the right hand side. I'm just going to put a little r with a circle because that's the only thing that's going to be done to the right hand side. Everything else will remain the same. So I have negative 3 times negative 5. That gives me a result of 15. Positive 15. Negative times negative is positive. And negative 3 times a positive x is a negative 3x. Now that I have negative 3x, positive 15, I could bring the rest of the problem straight down. 9 plus 5x. With this, I could now move on to my second step, which would be to combine like terms. Notice on the left-hand side of the equation, I only have one number and one variable, so there's nothing to combine. On the right-hand side, I only have one number and one variable. Once again, nothing to combine. Moving on to the next step. I want to move all of my variables to one side. In this case, I'm going to move that negative 3x to the left side. So I'm going to remove this by adding the opposite. This is a negative 3, so I'm going to add a positive 3x to both sides. Add 3x, that's positive on both sides. By writing these little notes to myself of what's happening, I can actually then do the work right here. This eventually will not be, we're not going to do this forever, but it's going to be a great way for me to know what to do. So I have 9. If I add 3x to that, I can't combine that, so I'm just going to bring my 9 down. And then I have my 5x plus 3x is a total of positive 8x. On the right hand side, I have 15. And then I have negative 3 plus 3. That is creating a 0, which is one of my, what I call my secrets of algebra. Creating a 0 that leaves the 15 by itself. I don't have to do anything else on that. My next step will be to move all of my regular numbers. We call these constants, but we could still call them regular numbers for now. And I'm going to add them, or add to get rid of that one. Since that is a positive 9, I'm going to add the opposite. So I'm going to add negative 9 on both sides of the equation so I can get all of my numbers just on one side. So I only have numbers. So 9 plus negative 9 is 0. Once again, created a 0 pair. Plus 8x. 0 plus 8x is 8x. And 15 plus negative 9 is positive 6. My following step will be to find a way to get that 8x by itself. So I'm going to take that 8x, or that x by itself, I'm sorry, not 8x, by removing the 8 somehow. The only way I could do this is by multiplying by the reciprocal or dividing by 8, but we're just going to say we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of 8, which is 1/8, and we're going to do this on both sides. By doing that, I am left with 8 times 1/8, which is 8/8 times x, being equal to 6 times 1/8, which would be 6/8. But this is very easily simplified because 8 over 8 is 1. 1 times x is x by itself, is equal to 6/8, which I could simplify by making this look more like a simplified fraction. 6/8 can easily be simplified by cutting these numbers in half. 6 cut in half is 3. And 4 cut in half is, or 8 cut in half is 4. This is the solution to my first problem. And if I were to multiply and substitute my solution in here, it would get a little messy because it's a fraction, but we'll do that when I get back on Thursday. This is like I said, my first example. Pretty simple, not very crazy. I hope you guys are able to do the rest of the problems. Make sure you follow the same steps. Now that I look back at the way I rearranged the worksheet, the problem is written backwards, kind of like the -5 and the x are switched. But if you notice, we have the exact same answer because it's still adding the same thing. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask Mr. D. He should be able to help you just fine. But make sure that you are writing our steps on the right-hand side of the worksheet. This is the most important thing for you to be able to do on these next couple of days.